Please welcome to the stage Shane Torres.
Hello. How are y'all? Doing all right? Yeah. How about a round of applause for all my new friends you guys saw tonight, yeah? And one for Kevin, too, of course, yeah. Okay, so I'm a comedian, so I had to take all the punchlines out of this. And when I did that, I was having Mexican food, and I started crying over a burrito. So if I get a little fucked up on this, yeah, it could be worse, is what I'm telling myself. So when I was 15 years old, I had to move my father into a homeless shelter. And I think to have the best grasp of this story, you'd have to understand what kind of person my father was. I would say my father was a good guy, but not a good man, if that makes sense. He had a lot of trouble meeting his responsibilities towards his family and anybody else, really. Yeah, that was a joke. You laugh like a bully's friend, by the way. Get him, Doug. Still trying to keep it loose. Can't do it. Got barriers up. Also, round of applause for Dirk in the back of the bar, guys. He just brought home an 8-month-old kid. So, I'll tell you what happened. We'd lost our house in my folks' divorce, and my dad got an apartment, and my mom somehow managed to scrape together enough money to get us into a house in our neighborhood. So it was the summer after they divorced, and I was standing outside of my mom's place having a cigarette. That was cool. And I was enjoying my Camel, and I'm a brand loyalist. My father pulled up in a Plymouth Acclaim, which is a weird thing to name a car that got so little of it. And it was just fucking floor to roof, just piled with all of his shit. And he gets out of the car, and I say, "Dad, what's going on?" And he just goes, "Plain as God's thumbprint. Shaney, gotta move into a homeless shelter, could use another pair of hands." It's like, fuck, that's how you're gonna say it? And I know most divorced dads would take their kids to a movie or a Cowboys game, but he was on a budget. So I says, okay. And I'm from the south side of Fort Worth, Texas, and we get on I-35 and we head north to Lancaster Ave. And Lancaster Ave is one of the shittiest parts of town. There's nothing but homeless shelters and attics. It looks like a poverty grenade went off and everybody threw themselves on it. It's fucked. Yeah. And pull up to the shelter, right? And it was fucking huge. I remember how big it was. And go in and get his key. And we each have an armful of his shit. And we're in the elevator. And we take it to the top floor. And my dad was in the penthouse. And and we're walking through. And there's all these homeless guys walking out of the showers in towels and stuff. They're all named the General. They're fucking crazy looking. And we get to my dad's room. I say room, but it was really just 4 pieces of plywood that were about 8 feet high and just kind of sectioned off in what more or less would be a warehouse space. And where he's in there, and it's a little bit, it's a third of the size of this stage. And he's like, all right, I'm going to organize my shit. You go downstairs and get some more of my stuff. And I was like, okay, I love you. And he was like, just go get my stuff. And I go down to the car, go down to the Acclaim, and I have some old records of my dad's. And I get in the elevator, and I'm by myself. And I know y'all can't tell now, but when I was 15, I was fucking cute. Like rosy cheeks, a lot of curves. Like a young Christina Hendricks. And Shane liked the boys too. And I'm standing in there, you know, cute as can be, by myself. And the elevator door is closing, right? And like out of a movie, the most hairy knuckled hand I'd ever seen in my, just, ah! And in walked a man I can only describe as having one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. Just, sweater of life is unraveling. This dude, fucked. Just, I don't, like, beaten, you know? And in a voice that made Johnny Cash sound like Vincent Price, he just goes, "You're kind of young to be moving in here on your own." To which I replied, "Oh, no, I have a home." And look, I didn't mean it like that. I know, because when I saw his face, really hurt his feelings. It's like kicking something down a flight of stairs and there's more stairs than you thought. But I wasn't gonna like hug him or anything. And I'm like, all right, we'll see ya. You know, and walk out with my Linda Ronstadt records, and I get back to my dad's room, and like I can hear him crying. And I say, I didn't want to embarrass him, so I said, "Pop, here, I need you to help me with the door. I got too much stuff." And so, you know, his face is all puffy and shit, but I didn't, you know. And I kind of was thinking, like, why would, he probably just didn't want to do that alone. It's a shitty thing to have to do. So, like, I have some perspective on it now, but I didn't then. And eventually, my dad moved out of the shelter with 2 other guys. So imagine Animal House as a drama. Or the funniest episode of The Wire. And so the first, he's like, "Hey, I'm out of the shelter, come over and see me." And I was like, all right. And I drive over, and I have my little brother with me. We're pretty close. He's, so I'm kind of feeling protective or whatever. So I don't know these fucking guys. And I get over, and I knock on the door, and who do you think answered? Because it wasn't me, and it wasn't my dad, and there's only one other person in this story. So this is not some dude I had crushed, but my new Uncle Tommy, who used to be a meth cook for the Hells Angels. And the other guy, this is where it gets weird, he was mentally unstable. And he had like a vocal impairment, like he could speak just about like this much, you could barely hear him. And everything he told us about himself, hand to God, was a character trait Steven Seagal held in one of his movies. So we would be over there, and he would just be like, you know, I used to be a Navy SEAL, but now I'm a cook. And you're like, my wife was killed by a crooked senator, and you're like, fuck. It's like me and Kurt Russell saved the president. He's a crazy person. And he kind of looked like him and shit. Was weird. But my dad had to move out because Tommy started cooking meth again. in a 3-bedroom apartment. And these guys didn't own anything, and my father didn't have much, but he had more than them. So he was taking all the dishes and everything out of the living room, television, all this shit. And I guess the real tragedy of this story is that I had to help somebody move twice. But we were moving all this shit out, and Tommy, he stopped my dad as we're getting the last box of stuff or whatever, and Tommy just stops him. And this is actually the saddest thing I have ever heard. He just goes, "Simon, could you leave me a spoon?" Fuck. Now, y'all may not have a lot, but you probably have a spoon. Fuck me up. But eventually, my dad, he got his shit together, got a job. He met a wonderful woman. She lived 3 blocks from my mom. So just, what? Things went pretty well for a while. Like they were married. He had a house with her. They traveled, and then about 12 years later, he had a stroke. And you know how those go. Fuck you up pretty good. And we had to pull him off, put him on hospice, so he wasn't coming out of it. That happened, but not before him being so broke. My father never met a dollar he couldn't spend. They were so broke by the time my father died, he had to sell their grave plots. So he kind of ended up homeless anyways. Oh, I lived it. And some of you were like, well, clearly you cremated him. Yeah, that's true. But some of you were like, well, your father was a great wanderer. Where could you have possibly spread those ashes? I'll tell you. We kept them. And then when my grandmother, my father's mother, when she passed away, we put his urn in her casket. So he kind of just moved back in with his mom. Thank you all very much. I'm Shane Torres. I appreciate it.